One common thread that we'll find with brands that are internationally renowned, especially in our car audio industry, is heritage, because these are brands that have a long history in developing great gear for us to enjoy. Now, when it comes to audiophile grade gear, Kenwood is no slouch, for they've been innovating for decades. Today, we've got their product expert, Josh Bowen, in the studio with us, and we're going to go through some of these innovations and, more importantly, what makes Kenwood eXcelon gear audiophile grade. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM, all about Kenwood eXcelon, and it starts now. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. On the menu today, Kenwood eXcelon, the top-tier offering from our friends at Kenwood, who have been literally engineering and creating awesome gear for us to enjoy in car audio for many, many years. Now, Josh, you're joining us today. Happy to have you again, sir. What can we expect to talk about in today's discussion?
Love that, Ben. Super excited to be here and super excited to be talking about all things Kenwood. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the history. Like, as you made mention, we've been doing this for literally decades. And then we'll talk about what makes our products and what holds them up to the standards that we hold them up to internally, to check all those boxes for the audiophile customer.
All right, excited to get into it with you, Josh. But first, an opportunity for our partner SiriusXM to remind you dealers out there why you should love it. And when we come back, I got Josh Bowen from Kenwood, and we're talking eXcelon. Don't you dare go away.
Hey guys, Ricky Lima here from SiriusXM. I had a chance to speak to some dealers and ask them what they love about selling SiriusXM. Here's what they had to say.
Coast-to-coast coverage.
I love SiriusXM for commercial-free music.
It's a great add-on sale and a profit opportunity.
We love selling SiriusXM because you can listen to the same channel coast to coast.
Profitability and ease of installation. It's a no-brainer.
We love selling SiriusXM for its ease of installation, great profitability, and reliability.
People love it.
All right, thanks for sticking with us. Now, Josh, I love it when we're talking about audiophile grade stuff, because this is the top tier, and that's what Kenwood eXcelon is. It is that top tier offering from the Kenwood brand. But first, tell us a little bit about the history of the ingenuity and all the innovations that Kenwood has had in its rich history within car audio.
So the history is something that me personally, I very much enjoy. And it's because I think whenever I dive into anything, I want to know where it started and how it got to where it is today. And that's something that I was incredibly interested to learn about Kenwood. Kenwood was actually founded back in 1947. And a lot of people don't know that, but the person who brought Kenwood to the market was a guy named Bill Kasuga, who started off by manufacturing two-way radios in his basement. And it grew from two-way radios into what it is today, which is a global company that employs over 16,000 people. And I think that's incredibly impressive. We didn't do that, though, without offering some form of innovation throughout the categories that we were dabbling in, right? So, for example, we were one of the few companies that were able to meet the weight requirements and the product performance requirements to work with McLaren, to outfit some of the McLaren F1 vehicles with our Kenwood branded product. Now, we did this through a lot of different types of experimentation. For example, at one point, we manufactured speakers out of benchotan charcoal, which is a fun word to say, but an even more fun experience when you start investigating that and looking that up. And it was actually known for being a lightweight substance that was also very durable, so that our speakers could have a lightweight cone that was resistive to the environments that it would be installed in. We went beyond that, manufactured the first pull-out cassette player, if anybody remembers what cassettes are, and so much more that has brought us to where we are today.
Oh, thank you for those stories. We love learning about brands and the history and why, where things are today is because of our history. So it's important to note these things. So thank you, Josh, for that. Now, to fast forward a little bit into our modern era of car audio, one of the items or features, shall I say, that Kenwood has really become known for is the high quality, high voltage output that the source units provide. And this is incredibly important for any audiophile grade system because it all starts with the source. So what can you tell us about the innovation when it comes to that high output that Kenwood decks are so well known for?
I love that you brought up the 5-volt pre-outs because I love addressing it because it's often a common misconception that higher voltage pre-outs means more volume, right? Now, there are people who are obviously way more educated on this subject than me, so I'm not trying to sound like I am the end-all be-all when it comes to 5-volt pre-outs. However, I do know enough to know that that higher voltage doesn't mean we get more volume. It means that we get a cleaner signal and we can tune our amplifiers lower, which helps to reduce the noise floor. For example, anyone who's ever gotten in a vehicle and they turn it on and they hear that hiss in the background, typically what you're listening to is called an elevated noise floor. That's the sound of the components internally on the amplifiers being on and running. And we're hearing that because more often than not, the gains are higher than they should have to be on that amplifier. Having 5-volt pre-outs running into that amplifier allows us to tune those gains more moderately, or input sensitivities, down to a level where we don't have that hiss, but we still have a great listening experience at a great listening level.
Thanks, Josh, for that explanation about the benefits of 5-volt out. But when we are talking about volume, something I want to point out was the volume at max when it comes to eXcelon units, or maybe it's more, and I'll let you educate us on that. But what does that mean for those guys that, always have the windows rolled down and just want to crank that up? What elements or what technologies do you have in place to optimize that situation?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you asked it, Ben. So one thing that I love about our eXcelon quality products is that they are built to a higher level and they're held to a little bit higher standard. I mean, that is what makes eXcelon what eXcelon is. To take that a step further, inside of the eXcelon family, we have our eXcelon reference, right? And these 10.1-inch receivers fall under that eXcelon reference window. Now, eXcelon and eXcelon reference receivers actually have the ability to turn that volume knob all the way to the right. You've heard the joke, I'm sure, many times, all knobs to the right. This is a case where you have the ability to do that, and you have a completely clean signal all the way out. So if you were to take one of our receivers and hook it up to an RTA, play some pink noise, and then turn that receiver knob all the way up, you're still going to see a perfect wave coming out of that with no soft clipping or no hard clipping. As a matter of fact, I just demonstrated this at a training I did with some of our dealers recently. And a lot of the people in there were mind blown to learn that you could have that receiver at max volume, or 40 if we want a number, and still see a clean wave on the output side of it. This means that we have a clean signal, even at max volume, that's running into our amplifier. So if our gains are set appropriately, we can have a clean listening experience with no clipping all the way out to the speakers themselves.
Okay, Josh, so sticking with the source unit theme, and don't worry, guys, we're going to get to actual hardware in a second. But these are elements that are important, very important to understand, that Kenwood has worked so hard to build these type of features and technology to really elevate their product in this category. And one of those features that are really commendable is the collaboration with Maestro. You've heard of that. That's right. We're talking about the integration aspect of eXcelon products as well, because that's incredibly important. What's the point of having all this great feature and sound if we can't maintain and keep all the great functionality that your vehicle comes with? So there's a story here, Josh, and I'd like to for you to talk a little bit about collaboration between Kenwood and Maestro.
That's a really cool story to talk about because we were actually the first receiver to start working with iDataLink Maestro. That entitled us to some extra goodies, and even more so true up into recent dates. This gives us exclusive features that we enjoy by working with our partnership with iDataLink Maestro. As many of you know, there are some vehicles on the road today which require an iDataLink Maestro module in order to change that receiver out. So rest assured that if you are in one of those installation applications, choosing a Kenwood product is going to give you the best of what Kenwood and iDataLink Maestro has to offer.
All right, Josh, let's crack open this conversation a little bit deeper now. Let's get back onto audio and some of the features that these eXcelon reference source units have. Well, I'm going to call it DSP properties because that's basically what it is. What can you tell us?
So I love talking about the DSP properties that are found in our receivers. Now, first of all, I always like to lead by saying that I'm not telling you to not sell a DSP if you have the ability to do that. I am telling you, though, that our receivers have some similar and shared properties that a lot of people never knew could be found in the audio settings tab. Now, these will be limited as opposed to what a full-blown DSP could do. For example, one of those features is a parametric equalizer that can be activated inside of our 10.1-inch floating panel receivers. Now, this being in the receiver itself gives you 9 bands of parametric equalization. To take it a step further, we can go into the high pass channel, band pass, or the low pass. Now, depending on whether you have the receiver in two-way or three-way mode will depend on how those channels are reflected. And what I mean by that is our receivers actually have the ability to manipulate the pre-outs on the backside of them. Traditionally, these would be categorized as a front, rear, and subwoofer output. But if we put this in three-way mode, the front actually becomes our high pass or tweeters in this application. The rear becomes our band pass, which would power our mids and the doors. And the subwoofer stays a subwoofer ultimately, but is now labeled as a low pass output. This allows us to designate specific frequency ranges that come out of those pre-out levels and then have those running into our amplifier to start amplifying those specific ranges appropriately. Then putting all of those pieces together would lead us to our time alignment options that are found in the receiver. Now you have two options when you open up the time alignment page. One of those is to use some of the preset options that we have. For example, there's a front left focus or a front all focus. But if you really want to dive into this, you actually have the ability to go in and create manual adjustments. So you can literally measure the distance from the ear of the driver's seat to the speaker in the driver's door, and then input that distance. And we can do this for all of the speakers and all of the output levels from the receiver itself. These are some really exciting principles to learn about that can be found inside of our eXcelon and eXcelon reference quality receivers.
Okay, I got one more piece of, I guess, is technology that we have to talk about before we get into the hardware of things, because everything we're going to talk about in hardware also relates to being high-res certified. If you don't mind, Josh, please take a second and explain what that means from a technical standpoint and how that applies to, well, the listener.
So high-res audio is something that's important to talk about because oftentimes we see a logo on a box, but we don't actually understand what it means. So for example, if we're looking at our receivers, our amplifiers, or our speakers that have that logo on the box, that means that our products checked all of the standards off of their list of to-dos whenever we were going through those high-res audio certifications. A couple of examples of what that means. It means that our receivers, speakers, and amplifiers have the ability to reproduce sound up to 40 kilohertz and do so at a minimum of a 24-bit depth. This allows us to have great products that we can stand behind and know that they are going to reproduce sound in the way that your audiophile customers would be looking for. To take it a step further, though, if they can reproduce that sound, they need to be able to do it with the file types that your customers would be listening to it on, which is why it's important for our receivers to have FLAC reproduction available, WAV, and DSD. Now they can do this at 192 kilohertz with 24-bit resolution. The icing on the cake, though, is that we recently implemented a technology in our 10.1s called LDAC. This allows Android customers and your high-res audio players to be able to play signals or send signals to our receivers wirelessly and have that signal put out at 192K 24-bit resolution. Knowing that all of your Kenwood eXcelon products installed in the vehicle check those boxes, meet those standards to deliver a great listening experience for your customers.
All right, we've spent the time talking about the different technologies and the innovations, but now it's great to tie it all together by culminating in what the offering is currently from Kenwood eXcelon. Let's start with the source unit category, Josh, because obviously, let's remind you that Kenwood is a full line brand, but we will start with the source units because obviously we like to start at the source.
My main goal is to make sure that everybody who stayed along with us and viewed this far into the video is to have kind of a general consensus of comfort, knowing that if they're starting their audiophile build, doing so with an eXcelon or an eXcelon reference receiver is the way to go. Some of the topics we've covered, for example, to me, it's a no-brainer of why you would choose one of these models. Having the 5-volt pre-outs, knowing we've got that higher voltage signal that sends that to the amplifier and does so without any clipping involved throughout that process. Or being able to fine-tune it a step further with some of those DSP properties we talked about, the parametric EQ and the time alignment, being able to utilize that 3-way crossover mode, the playback options of FLAC and DSD, taking it a step further with the wireless high-res audio certification as well for that LDAC that we mentioned at the very beginning of that segment as well. There's just so much that's found inside of these receivers, and some of those we haven't even talked about, like the tuned audiophile grade components that are found in all of our eXcelon and eXcelon reference products. This is another level of generating a true audiophile listening experience for our customers doing so all the way down to the bits and pieces that are found internally on those green little circuit boards that we all love looking at, if you're a tech nerd like myself. Ultimately, though, these are several pieces that help bring the story together of who Kenwood is and why we do what we do to create a great listening experience for our customers and exceed expectations in some of those categories as well.
All right, we're going to check that list, Josh, as far as the eXcelon and eXcelon reference source units are concerned. But like I mentioned, full line offering, because I'll tell you what, we're going to talk about speakers and we're going to talk about amplifiers within the eXcelon line, starting with the speakers, because these are some pretty special speakers. If you haven't seen them yet or had a chance to listen to them, Josh, there's some pretty unique stuff going on here. And from a value standpoint versus sound quality, these are definitely hard to beat.
I love the last note that you ended on there, right? A value standpoint. And that's something that's important to notice, because the reality is we know that there's speakers out there that go up to the thousands of dollars of ranges. And those speakers are capable of so much that's incredibly impressive. But the reality is not every customer has that budget. And that's where I think the eXcelon reference speakers specifically shine. I mean, these speakers come in at a much more affordable price point, but they are arguably, I think, some of the best sounding speakers in that price range, but also that we've ever created. I mean, if you look at the eXcelon reference line of full range speakers, these speakers have a new glass fiber cone that's amazing, helps to produce a durable speaker, but also reproduce great sounds. Or if we even take a look at the components themselves, the crossovers that are found in those, having the ability to set those up in a bi-ampable configuration, so that if we do want to run channel 1 to the woofer and channel 2 to the tweeter, without having to dive into cutting out those specific frequency ranges from a DSP or from the receiver, you can simply run those channels into that crossover, knowing that the crossover is doing all that work for you, which I think is an incredibly important part to that process when you're putting the appropriate power to a great sounding speaker. They also take plenty of power, speaking of that, up to 120 watts RMS that you can run to these speakers to get every bit of potential out of them that the eXcelon reference line has to offer.
And finally, the amplifier section. A nice selection here of 4 different amplifiers, super compact, multi-channels and monos. Josh, I would only expect that there's some key features here that really make them worthwhile, but not only that, to make them deserve the Kenwood eXcelon badging.
You're absolutely correct on that, Ben. There is a lot of thought and design elements that went into our amplifiers to make sure that they follow suit to that same standard our receivers and our speakers to. For example, the high performance parts that are put into this. We actually upgraded those internals to help with things like an enhanced signal to noise ratio, because we want to have clean amps that output plenty of power, but do so in a great listening experience at the same time. That's part of the whole high-res audio story, right? Ultimately, it boils down to that listening experience. Now, within our amp lineup, we don't have just one amp that does all of this, right? We actually have 4 different amplifiers that are found in our eXcelon reference family, and many more on the eXcelon side of things as well. Now, personally, I do lean towards the eXcelon reference side of things. One thing that I really enjoy is the specialized circuit design. Our amps actually utilize an analog, a digital, and a power supply circuit all internally onso, and do that by a slim chassis type design. One thing I always point out to everybody is in my vehicle, I had some limited space if I wanted to put the amp under my seat. And our XR9015, which is my favorite of that family, actually fit the mold to be able to fit under that because it was shallow enough to allow the seat to travel. My goal or point behind that is letting everybody know that even though these amps have all the components internally to achieve that high-res audio certification, but also to reproduce some great sound, it doesn't mean that it has to have a massive footprint. An amplifier like the XR9015 coming in at less than 3 inches in height, but being universal and easy to install is also something that's incredibly important to know, I think, and helps to differentiate our products versus some of the others in this category. Ultimately, though, any of the eXcelon reference or the eXcelon amplifiers are a great choice when you're looking to reproduce sound, do so for a high-res audio system, but also maybe keep some of that value in mind at the exact same time.
Josh, I just want to add one little note here on the XR9015. You talked about a slim profile, which it checks off all the boxes. The other thing, we're talking about value as with the speakers. Reading out the power output here, 60 watts times 4 and 400 watts times 1, and that's at 4 ohm. And you can bring that up to a 2 ohm 75 by 4 and get 600 watts times 1 for that subchannel. That's a lot of power in a small package, which I feel is a great offering, especially at this price point. Okay, Josh, we're going to round out this conversation. I feel that the story here is the consistency of piecing together an audiophile grade system with the offering that Kenwood eXcelon has through its high-res certification. So I'm going to leave you the floor to kind of summarize why you feel this all comes together in a symphonious manner.
I think the most important part about that is understanding that if a receiver is high-res audio capable, but an amplifier is not, then we do not have a high-res audio installation. It's important to know that every piece of that puzzle, when we're putting it all together, follows those same build standards. So knowing that your Kenwood eXcelon receiver has your high-res audio certification, the eXcelon amps and the eXcelon speakers or eXcelon reference, whichever family you choose to lay with, at the end of the day, all of those checked all of those boxes, which means you can install that system and sell that system with the confidence of knowing that it is truly a high-res audio certified installation and listening experience for your customers. At the end of the day, I think that's ultimately what we all want to create. Whenever our customers come in and they say those words that some of us love and some of us hate of audiophile, we want to know that we can sell that with confidence and that those customers are going to get exactly what they came in for. It makes us the experts and helps us to be the professional in those categories. So knowing that you have a line of products that meets all of those standards is a great thing to allow you to sell with that confidence and to install with that confidence of delivering a great product and creating relationships that last with your customers.
I want to thank my guest today, Josh Bowen from Kenwood, for coming in and answering all the questions we had for him, as well as this deep discussion on why Kenwood is audiophile grade. Now, if you're interested in any more information on any of the products covered on today's show, I do recommend you head over to their official website, kenwood.com. Now, in my closing comments, man, there is a reason why Kenwood has such a loyal following, as demonstrated by Josh's answers today. This is a very well thought out offering, from the speakers to the amplifiers and of course the source unit. The high-res certification is of course the thread that literally ties it all together. But I also want to mention something that is hard to explain, through the lens, and that is the fit and finish and the feel and presentation of these products. These are all very well machined, and when you see these products, you know they are high quality. I want to make a special reference to the speakers. When you see and hear these are speakers that absolutely pack a punch. They look high-end, they sound high-end, but man, the price is right. And that's something I definitely want to zone in on. Finally, the source units. That 10-inch is absolutely gorgeous, and you practically fall in love with it before you even hear what it sounds like. But then to know that it's high-res certified and all these great DSP adjustment features and time alignment features and crossover points just take it to that next level of being able to truly dial in that audiophile experience that you want to have for your customer. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, reconnect.
There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM with over 150 channels in your vehicle. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video on Demand. What you love is on now.